Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And today, well, today is Monday Fun Day.
I stop what you're doing, cause I'm about to ruin the image of me that you're used to. I look money, a king bee making honey, see? Each state, I hope you're ready for me. Now gather round, I'm the new sheriff in town. All my people rise up and stand your ground. Now drink up all the Diet Coke you got in your shelf. So just let me introduce myself. My name is Trump D. I like my mashed potatoes lumpy. Fake news, oh how I like to punk thee. That little sniper on the slope tin, he took a shot but he missed me. I don't fall, y'all, I'm like the ever ready bunny. Still going strong and spunky. So put on your big boy pants. Come on, let's do the dance.
The Trumpy dances, it shines to do the Trump.
Come on, do the Trumpty Trump. Come on and do the Trumpty Trump. Check me out, y'all. We do the Trumpty Trump. Just watch me do the Trumpty Trump. Yeah. Do you know what I'm doing? We do the Trumpty Trump. Come on, everybody do the Trumpty Trump. It's time to do the Trumpty Trump. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, folks. Today is Monday Fun Day. We're going to have some fun, despite the fact what the left is trying to do, despite their attempts to assassinate our president for the third time now. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to have a good time because President Trump, and we're celebrating because President Trump is still with us. He is still president. And those who would seek to do harm to those they politically disagree with lost again. That's right. They lost again. President Trump is still here and advancing American interests and American values throughout the world. I'm still here, so I'm having a good time. Fortunately, Mike was not able to be here, but I'm here. You're here. We're here. And, like I said before, President Trump is still here, so we're going to have a good old time today. And we're going to start off that good old time the way we always do, and that is with a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with the folks over at Hitman Industries. They make rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase at any length. Just go to hitmanindustries.net. We've got the California Republican Assembly working to help elect conservatives at all levels of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Find out the criteria that they use when judging candidates. Just go to cragop.org. That's cragop.org. And then you've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hawgholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com. Well, why is it spelled like that? Because they like helping Americans wear guns. They like it so much they're going to give you a discount. Just use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, one word, just like it is right up there, and you're going to get your Hog holster on discount today. And then finally, the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun, and that would be at uscombatgear.com. They have a huge selection. They specialize in group sales. They are the place to go if you are the purchasing agent for your department, for your agency, for your group, or just for your friends. You want a big purchase, you go there, uscombatgear.com, the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun. Also want to encourage you, if you're watching this program live, 3 p.m. If you're watching this program 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, you are watching us live, and we would love to hear from you. Go ahead and let us know what you think about the program, where you're watching us from, any of those things. Just all I just ask one thing. I just ask that you make it interesting. Otherwise, well, by the way, if you're interesting, the most interesting thing you can do is to disagree, because when you disagree, it gives us the opportunity to mock you.
Oh, wow, is that a mockingbird?
Man, is that a mockingbird? Is that a mockingbird?
That's right. As Mike would say, we will mock you. All right. As you know, and I'm sure unless your head has been buried in the sand somewhere, President Trump has survived the third attempt on his life. That's right. For the third time, twice while he was running for president, and now once while he has been president, he has survived an attempt by an individual, by someone on the left, to end his life. In this particular case, it happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Let me see if I can pull up the news article here. Where did my mouse go? It's somewhere around here. Here we go. That's the problem with being both in front of and behind the camera at the same time. Sometimes you can't find stuff, but here we go. Bam. It says here, this is a report from over at the California Globe, and there's tons of places, but this is the one I like the most because I like the California Globe. President Trump survives unprecedented third assassination attempt. Fight, fight, fight. That is what candidate Trump yelled to the crowd in Butler, Pennsylvania, when a psycho tried to assassinate the Republican leader in the 2020 in the 2024 presidential race. As shocking as it is, there was yet another attempt, a third attempt, on the 2026 at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The first was in Butler, Pennsylvania. The second was at Trump's own golf course in Florida, the Trump International Golf Club, West Palm Beach, and last night, the third. Law enforcement officials identified the alleged assassin as Cole Thomas Allen, who was arrested near the screening area outside of the banquet hall. One Secret Service officer was struck in a bullet-resistant vest and is expected to recover. Members of Allen's family contacted police recently with information on Allen's radical behavior and radical groups he was involved in, as well as having several weapons and weapons training. You see here's some posts here from. Anyway, it says here. Turley said in an interview with Brian Kilmeade's Sunday show, "We live in an age of rage, and there are people fueling this rage. Rage is addictive and dangerous. You love control. People like Allen will hear it as a license for violence," and that's really what it was. Because what they noted was that he basically said the reason why he was doing it, the reason why he was attacking him, was because, well, he said because he thought that Donald Trump was a pedophile. He said he thought that he was a pedophile protecting pedophiles. He believed that he would basically, that's what it came down to. He believed all of the lies, all of the conspiracies that are being put out there by the left regarding President Trump. And that kind of gets me into our anyway, so right now you've got people out there right now who are just like, not only are they not apologetic, not only are they like not thinking about how the things that they have said and the lies that they have spread, they're not even thinking about those things, about maybe I need to calm down on my rhetoric. No, they're not. They're actually looking to double down on that rhetoric. They're actually blaming Donald Trump. They're basically acting like, well, yeah, he's a pedophile, so he needs to go to jail. Now, mind you, this thing has been investigated. The Epstein files has been investigated. All the information, everything is out there. And there's absolutely nothing accusing or pointing to Donald Trump being a pedophile. Yet and still, that does not stop the left from perpetuating it. And when they do it, and when they get out there, and when they perpetuate it, they forget that, you know what? I get it for them. It's all rhetorical. It's all political hyperbole. But in actuality, there are people out there who hear that, they take it into account, and then they go and they act upon it. Because they're like, at a certain point, you keep calling him a Nazi. You keep calling him the next Hitler. And eventually someone's going to say, well, you know what? Someone has got to do something about it. And that's where a lot of folks on the left are starting to get. And that kind of gets me to the second point when it talks about political violence being all the rage for the left. And the reason why this particular idea stood out because it was actually part of a commentary that was written not by some right-wing rag, but actually a piece that you can read in the Times. All right. Here it says, a recent podcast by the New York Times suggested that petty left might be, quote, the new political protest. The paper culture editor, Naja Spiegelman, coined the term micro looting for the phenomenon of people stealing small things from corporations like Whole Foods. This was described as a political resistance against immoral laws, namely that some people become billionaires. Agreeing that he would, quote, pirate, i.e. steal music from an indie band, the immensely influential radical Hassan Piker said he was, quote, pro-piracy all the way. On whether he would steal from the levure, He opined, "We've got to get back to cool times like that. Bank robberies, stealing priceless artifacts, things of that nature." In Britain, the Greens leader, Zach Polanski, said something similar. People living in poverty were forced to steal, he declared, because they had no other option. There's now a shoplifting resistance movement, Take Back Power, whose adherents steal food from supermarkets and give it to food banks. Activists claim that liberating produce is, quote, nonviolent action to resist the super rich, but being cool doesn't end the freeing carrot. In December 2024, Brian Thompson, chief executive of Healthcare United, was shot in the back and killed in a New York street. Piker said, quote, "Many understand Luigi Mangione, the man charged with murdering him, because Thompson himself was guilty of, quote, social murder." And once again, it goes forward, and one can make the same exact things or make the exact same statements about, well, what's going on in particular, what happened with this particular shooting, as well as is noted in this particular segment over at Sky News.
Joining me now is Newsweek's senior editor-at-large, Josh Hammer. Josh, how complicit are the Democrats and their propagandists in the mainstream media in the political violence we're seeing?
Extremely complicit is the short answer of this, Rita. I am sick off my rear end of this notion that both sides in America's royal and political debate are equally to blame for the current state of political violence in this country. That is one of the biggest loads of crap that the media and the elites in this country have ever attempted to force feed the American people. And no one in their right mind should buy this. Period, full stop, end of story. In my telling of the story, Rita, this goes back at least as far back, arguably further, but it goes at least as far back as Floyd Lee Corkins, who tried to shoot up the Family Research Council, the social conservative think tank in Washington, D.C. back in 2012. Then you, of course, had James Hodgkinson, who tried to shoot up the Republican congressional baseball team. He actually almost did fatally wound Steve Scalise there back in 2017. You had Nicholas Roski, who tried to fly cross country and try to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. He had zip ties, trying to commit an unspeakable act there to try to prevent the Dobbs opinion overturning Roe versus Wade. You had the assassination of my friend Charlie Kirk. Then you now have 3 attempts on Donald Trump's life. The manifesto of this most recent would-be assassin, Cole Thomas Allen, the manifesto is positively chilling. He's not mincing words there, Rita. He's telling us exactly how he feels there. He was sick of Donald Trump, who he refers to as a pedophile and a rapist and a traitor and this, that, there. He was sick of him and his minions, his cabinet members, actually leading this country there, and he wanted to take matters into his own hands. This is the logical consequence of an entire political movement that for years, for at least a decade or two, in the era of wokeism and hyper-progressivism, has intuited and has disseminated this notion that words are violence and that violence and words are interchangeable and are essentially the same thing there. And you have these streamers like Hassan Piker who are now openly advocating for it. I was just watching this clip on social media earlier today there, this compilation. It's like a 4-minute long compilation of Hassan Piker just calling for violence over and over and over again there. And now you have most recently Ro Khanna out in Silicon Valley, who once upon a time styled himself a moderate Democrat. Ro Khanna was from Silicon Valley. He was trying to get the donations of all these major corporations out there. He actually is saying that he has no regrets about appearing with Hassan Piker, who openly calls for the murder of Rick Scott, my senator here in Florida. It is a really scary time, Rita, to be part here of the American political conversation, because you have one side that seemingly is just not interested in reason there. And these platitudes,
See, he's 100% right. The left is not interested. Well, many on the left, at least the most vocal on the left, because you don't see them. You see them coming out and they're all like, well, Donald Trump said this. And they're like, well, Donald Trump perpetuates violence. I'm like, okay, so when has Donald Trump called someone a Nazi? When has he come out and claimed that people were child molesters? When has he come out and claimed that not elected someone that they're going to lock up all the gays and they're going to lock up all the lock up all the reporters. Where is it? Where is that? Where is he saying that? Where has he said that about anybody? You know, you say things that make people, and some folks here, a couple of local talk show hosts, Armstrong and Getty, made the statement, and here's a good measure. If what you are saying about somebody were actually true, would it provoke someone to say, you know what, they probably need to be put down? If that is true. In other words, if you say, well, if you know for a fact that someone is quote unquote a child molester, does that or does that not constitute a reason in someone's mind to kill them? In particular, if they're a child molester who you know is not going to be held accountable by the justice system. Now, I want you to think about that, because that's what some folks are thinking. You think, oh, well, I'm just being hyperbolic. I'm just exaggerating to make a point. But there are people out there who hear you say this. And when I say you, I know you, the average person out there, just thinking, well, I'm just an average person. But we've got Congress people saying this. We've got entertainers saying this. We've got people in the media. We're talking opinion leaders who are repeating these things. People who are supposed to be knowledgeable, people who are supposed to have forethought to the things that they say. But they're saying these things. They're saying these things that, if true, would warrant, in some people's minds, them being put to death. And so you have people out there like this guy in Washington, D.C. from California who are acting on it. Those people exist. You may be thinking to yourself, well, I'm not doing anything because I'm never going to act on that. I just see what I see and I'm just calling it the way I see it. But here's the problem. When you say that, when your leaders say that, when your opinion leaders say that, there are people out there who will act on it. Right now, as far as we know, there's at least 3. There are at least 3 who have attempted to kill Donald Trump as a result of things that are said by Democratic leadership. And here's the thing, folks, and I'll go with the guy here at Newsweek as well. This is not a both sides problem. This is not a both sides problem. You have one incident where an individual was killed, where a Democrat individual was killed in recent times. One. Almost every other instance of political violence, not even just of political violence, of cultural violence, has always been someone from some left-wing ideology going after someone from more of a right-wing ideology or more of a conservative ideology, whether it's someone who is trans going after kids at a school, at a church school, or whether it's individuals who are attempting to assassinate the president, whether it's a Bernie bro who's going after and trying to kill Republican members of Congress. The number of incidents involving the left, of violence involving the left, have massively escalated. Now, I know people say, well, what about January 6th? January 6th was one day. And when you factor into the overwhelming majority of people who showed up to hear Trump speak, and then the small minority number of people who actually wound up engaging in violence, and by the way, I'm not justifying those who engage in violence. If anyone engaged in violence, they should have been thrown under the jail. I did not support President Trump doing the blanket pardons. A lot of the folks did deserve to be pardoned because they didn't engage in any violence. They didn't break any laws. All they did was, walk into the Capitol when Capitol Police just let them walk in. That was a lot of the people, but that wasn't all of them. At the same time, the left has absolutely no problem with all the looting, destruction of property, all the law enforcement officers who were attacked. Over 2,000 of them were injured during the Summer of Love George Floyd riots. 25 people died. 25 people died. Nobody died as a result of the the January 6th riot, with the exception of Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by a Capitol police officer, unarmed, shot by a Capitol police officer. But almost all political violence is done by the left. And I'm not trying to blame the left. What I am trying to do, though, is to get people to be accountable for the words that come out of their mouth, for the memes that they decide that they're going to post. If you're going to exercise your freedom of speech, and you have every right to do that, just understand that when you abuse those rights, it has consequences. And some of these consequences are people attempting to kill people on the right. And you know what? I'm wondering, are you secretly okay with that? Is that what it is? You're okay with them trying to kill people on the right? Because as much as the evidence shows what is happening, and it couldn't be any clearer, because in his manifesto, he's claiming the reason why he's doing this is for all the reasons that y'all say. For every accusation that y'all make, you on the left, I'm referring to, for every accusation that you make, those are all the reasons he highlights. Dude graduated from Caltech, I think with an engineering degree. So he's somewhat logical. A plus B plus C equals I need to shoot the president. That's what he said. Now, his equation was based on faulty logic and bad information, but where did he get that bad information? I don't know, but I know who's perpetuating it. I know who's trafficking in that bad information. It's the MSNBCs or the MS Nows. It's the ABC News, right? It's the NBC News. It's the New York Times. It's Mother Jones and the Huffington Post. It's the teachers' unions. It's the colleges and universities, the Ivy League schools of education. They're the ones that are trafficking in the lies and the disinformation. In particular, the lies and the disinformation that motivated this individual to shoot. Now I ask you, once again, I'm not going to sit here and say blame you. I'm not going to say it's your fault. This guy decided he was going to do that. It is his fault. He is the one who needs to be held accountable. But how about this? I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing, folks. Look, I get it. Not your dynamite. Not your explosive. How about you not light the fuse? How about that? How about you're the match, right? How about you not give him the matches? How about that? How about you not plug in the timer or be the blasting cap? How about that? How about you just take a moment and think about it? And once again, I will say the exact same thing to the right, because here's the deal. Even though most of the things that are going on, most of the violence is happening on the left, I know that there are plenty of people out there right now who are like, you know what? I'm tired of being reasonable. We are reasonable, and they come after us with violence. Right? We try to talk. We try to debate, like Charlie Kirk, and they killed him. Right? We try to go on college campuses and debate and talk, and Antifa shows up, and they shut it down. The colleges shut it down. Why should we be reasonable if we are not treated reasonably? That's how people feel. Now, I would say because it's the right thing to do. Just because it's the right thing to do, even if the other side doesn't do right, doesn't mean that we get to do wrong. But they're not wrong in saying, well, if they do it, we should be able to do it too. They're not wrong. They're not right, but they're not wrong. And I guarantee you, just like the violence of Antifa was the impetus for the birth of the Proud Boys, the folks on the left are not going to be able to continue to do this forever. And by the way, they know this. They want the right to violently react. That's another reason why we should not, because it works right into their plan. They don't care where the violence comes from. They just want violence. And when they get the violence, then we're going to blame. When they're violent, we get the blame. When we're violent, we get the blame. In the end, they want to tear down the whole structure, and the structure gets torn down when both sides are engaged in the violence. So we need to think about that. But I know there are reasonable people on the left who don't support this sort of stuff. I know you're out there. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic. Maybe I'm being Pollyannic, but I know you're out there because I've talked to you. I know you're out there. This is not something that we can stop. I can stop it for the people on my side. I can do what I can to address the people on my side. But folks, you got to police your own. Folks on the left, you got to police your own. And until you start doing it, and that's what I will totally give John Fetterman some credit for, is John Fetterman is doing it. Bill Maher is doing it, right? I mean, there are people on the left who are doing it. And sadly, as soon as they speak up and they say it, y'all treat them like they're your enemy, like they don't believe what you believe. Well, no, they believe, they share some of the values. They just don't, they're not the anarchists. They're not being intellectually dishonest the way you are intellectually dishonest. Not to say that they don't have their own intellectual dishonesty, but at least they're willing to acknowledge when wrong is wrong. And that's what's going on here in many of these cases. Now, what winds up happening is, and this is once again, here's an incident that involves guns. So guess what? As another would-be assassin fails, guess what Democrats do? They call for gun control. Again, this is a piece here from a friend of mine, Mr. Tom Knighton over at Bearing Arms, talking about this. It says, if President Donald Trump hadn't broken the all-time record for assassination attempts against him, he's got to be close as the White House Correspondents' Dinner, normally a time of the press thinking they still matter, the president playing along, and a lot of bad jokes by comedians who think they're funny. Gunshots are usually not on the agenda. Over the weekend, though, that changed, as I'm sure you've already heard. A California man traveled to Washington, booked a room at the hotel where the dinner was at, thus allowing him inside the building, and tried to take out Trump and any other administration official that got in his sights. He wasn't successful. We have a manifesto, more than that later today. Anyway, stating why he wanted to kill Trump, and it's the usual thing you hear from the left. So we know precisely what his motivations are. Though some people think this was staged because a longtime Democrat would conspire with a Trump White House to fake an assassination attempt that would hurt his side, ultimately benefit Trump. And not only did he agree with it, but the Trump administration didn't kill their patsy who could likely shatter the whole narrative. Honestly, some people are pathetic. Yeah. Anyway, let me read this. Luckily, not every Democrat jumped in on the hoax train, but what some of them are pushing is arguably even dumber. They're trying to leverage this for gun control. This is a report here. It says, today on CNN State the Nation, Representative Jamie Raskin said the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner could be a moment of unity that brought universal background checks for gun ownership. Raskin said, but we've not dealt with the problem. I mean, we're losing, thousands of people a year to gun violence. There are 100 people shot every day. So yesterday, while that nightmare was going on at the White House Correspondents' Ball, dozens of people had been shot across the country, and we just accept that as normal course of business. So, I think before we get back to the political divisions and fighting about stuff, maybe this could be a moment for unity, trying to focus on the things that the vast majority of American people want, like universal violent criminal background check. Now, I will note this. Number one, this guy had no criminal background. All right. Both of his guns were purchased legally. And by the way, neither one of his guns are quote unquote assault style weapons. That means that he didn't use an AR. He didn't use a centerfire semi-automatic rifle, right? He had a shotgun and he had a handgun. So he had 2 firearms, which, by the way, some in the media called an arsenal. Like if 2 guns constitutes an arsenal, well, I guess it depends on who you are, but I've never talked to anyone with half a brain cell that would ever try and convince me that 2 firearms constituted an arsenal. I'm not buying that one. Anyway, all that having been said, they're calling for gun control. So universal background checks wouldn't have helped because, well, dude had no criminal background check, right? In California, they already have red flag laws. Guess what? Dude's family already called the police. And in California, the police have the ability to institute red flag laws. They could have went and tried to take his guns or gone and done an investigation. The police chose to do nothing. They told him that his family told him that he was spiraling out of control, that he had purchased firearms, that he was taking weapons trainings. Nothing. Law enforcement didn't do a thing. Now, that doesn't mean in other cases they don't, but that didn't help. I mean, you name the gun control law, they have it. By the way, in Washington, D.C., they have all of the same gun control laws as well. And guess what? Didn't help. Now, just to note, I know you're wondering, well, how did he get the guns even in the building? Well, dude, once again, graduate from Caltech. Dude wasn't a dummy. Those who don't know, Caltech is one of the premier engineering schools in the country. Anyway, he realized that, well, if I check into the hotel a day or two before there's any security checks or anything, now I'm in the hotel. Now, mind you, there are several checks or there are several barriers between the hotel, like just general population, and where the individual could, where the president was. And needless to say, Secret Service stepped up and they took him down, or they got him down before he was able to do any real harm, before he was able to harm any of the folks in the ballroom. But it was scary nonetheless. I'm sure it was. It's still a little too close for comfort. How about that? In any case, but once again, he came from a place where there's a lot of gun control. He traveled to a place where there was a lot of gun control. And he was using firearms that didn't violate the law at all. Right? Neither one was even the scary black rifles that the left is so scared of. Yet still, they're calling for gun control. When he talks about universal background checks, that's the one that gets me the most, because once again, he wouldn't have failed it. We have those in California where he bought the guns. And yet, here we are. They have it in Washington, D.C., where he used the guns. And yet, here we are. Never let a tragedy go to waste. That's the Democratic motto, at least according to Rahm Emanuel. Anyway, just goes to show you, once again, they have no shame. In fact, they have so little shame. Hopefully they're starting to develop a little bit of shame, because there was a joke. So prior to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Jimmy Kimmel decided he was going to be funny. And he was going to do kind of a mock, like as if he were a comedian roasting the president at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And let's just say it didn't go. I will just play a little segment. There was one where he basically, I don't know if he was calling for it or if he was trying to be like, predicting the future.
We miss you so much. And of course, our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow. Melania's birthday is on Sunday.
Yeah, you have a glow like an expectant widow. And then all of a sudden at the dinner, there's an attempted assassination on her husband's life. That's why you don't joke about assassinating the president. That's why you don't joke about the death of the president, because when it comes to pass, you're going to catch a lot of grief. And there's a lot of people right now calling for Jimmy Kimmel to once again be suspended, or at the very least, or quite frankly, should lose his job. He should face some consequence. I mean, that is just beyond tasteless. By the way, whether or not something had happened, that's something that should happen. There should be some sort of consequences. That's just hateful. That is just really hateful, but it's nothing new for the left. See, they think that's okay because they don't like him. Because they don't like him, anything they say, they believe is wholly appropriate. And that is, once again, sad. All right, folks, that now brings us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Go to hogholsters.com, use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces. Get your Hog Holster today. All right, these first two are going to be from the Babylon Bee, fake news that you can trust. I love these headlines. It says, first one here, Trump enters ceasefire talks with Democrats. Yeah, you think? You think he needs to go in? I think he does. After 3 attempts, you would think that maybe ceasefire talks would make sense. And then next we have liberals applaud improving diversity of would-be Trump assassins. So they finally got a brother. They finally got a brother in the group of potential assassins. So so much for the crazy white guy. All right, now this next one here, once again, this is from a guy, Nick Freitas, who is a former member of the House of Representatives there in Virginia. But I think he makes a very salient point when it comes to how the right, or we conservatives, would use guns and see guns, and how the left sees guns and would use them.
You know, after the latest assassination attempt on Donald Trump, I think I'm starting to understand why the left is so adamant about gun control. They are terrified that we will start using guns the way they use guns. But good news, we see guns as a way to protect people we love, not shoot people we have political disagreements with, right? So instead of gun control, what if you guys tried self-control? That might fix it all.
No. We don't do self-control here in the United States, or at least not in the Democratic Party. Democratic Party does not do self-control. That is not their thing. They want to control others. Like, I don't have to be in control of myself if I'm in the Democratic Party. I can do whatever I want. I can be free. I can think what I want. I can go according to how I feel. I can live my life how I feel. I can be my authentic self. It's you that I have to control. And your stuff. Anyway, this next one, I have to admit, this is funny because largely because I have a security system, and now I'm thinking, maybe this would be a better way to go.
I know why they put me under the microscope at TSA, and I'll tell you why. Because here's a fun fact about me. I hang the Confederate flag and the ISIS flag in front of my house, and I'll tell you why I do that. I do that because I cannot afford a home security system. So my house is under 24-hour surveillance by the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA for free. You're welcome.
Okay, yeah, it's called a joke. For those of you who are like, that's not funny. Yeah, it's a joke. It's called a joke. Anyway, it was hilarious. I don't care what y'all say. Anyway, folks, that brings us to the end of our program. But before we go, we're going to do one more quick shout out to our sponsors. We've got Hitman Industries, rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase at hitmanindustries.net. We've got the Conscience of the Republican Party, CRA, or the California Republican Assembly. Check them out at cragop.org. And then we've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com, because they like helping Americans wear guns. And then finally, we have the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun, and that would be at uscombatgear.com. And with that, we're going to go ahead and call it a shoe. We will be back tomorrow on Taco Tuesday. Till then, y'all have fun. Y'all stay safe. We will see you. Mañana.